The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God would come, Jesus said in reply, "The coming of the kingdom of God cannot be observed, and no one will announce, 'Look, here it is,' or 'There it is,' for behold, the kingdom of God is among you." Then he said to his disciples, "The days will come when you will long to see one of the days of the Son of Man, but you will not see it. There will be those who will say to you, 'Look, there he is,' or 'Look, here he is.' Do not go off, do not run in pursuit. For just as lightning flashes and lights up the sky from one side to the other, so will the Son of Man be in his day. But first he must suffer greatly and be rejected by this generation." The Gospel of the Lord. Probably St. Luke's Gospel was written some 30 or 40 years after the death and resurrection of Jesus. And one of the attitudes that his followers had was that the end was going to come fairly soon. We certainly see that very strongly in some of St. Paul's letters, like the first letter to the Thessalonians. And so people were wondering, well, when is it going to be? But they were invited to go back to Jesus' words as we hear them in the Gospel today, spoken just before Jesus went into Jerusalem and was taken away to be put to death. And he said, "Don't be overly preoccupied about when the end is going to come." And we know that down the ages there have been some people who have become quite preoccupied about this. Jesus says, no, just keep going. Be patient, live your faith, look for the coming of the kingdom, which is not going to be something that you can say, oh, there it is, or there it is. It's something that is within us and works within the various cultures in which we find ourselves. And so Jesus says, be patient. Now, we profess in our creed that after he died and rose and ascended into heaven, he will come to judge the living and the dead. So we do look for that day when the Lord is going to come and bring everything to its fulfillment, and all of us and our whole world will stand before Jesus the judge. But probably most of us aren't anticipating that. We are anticipating that we will die personally at our proper moment, and we will stand before the judge at that time. And so it's a call for us, and not just each of us personally, but for all of us together, to look for the ways to live according to the gospel in our present context. And that's what St. Paul is instructing his dear friend Philemon. They are both related to a person named Onesimus, who is Philemon's slave. And we know that the New Testament does not say that slavery needs to be abolished. On the contrary, in several places, it talks about slaves who have become followers of Jesus, who should be obedient to their masters and show that they have that attitude. On the other hand, it also tells masters they should treat their slaves with dignity. But here, St. Paul seems to be taking all of this a step further. And for some reason or other, Onesimus has found St. Paul in prison. Probably he was probably catechized by Paul and baptized. And now Paul is saying, Philemon, let Onesimus come back to you, but don't have him as a slave anymore. Now be together as brothers. And this perhaps was one of the inspirations that finally led us Christians so many centuries later, long after it should have been done, to say that slavery is totally against our understanding of the gospel of Jesus. So it's again a reminder to us that it takes our tradition a while to realize how God is calling us. And maybe that's why Jesus tells us, go forward patiently, try to live according to the kingdom of God, but don't get too preoccupied about when it's all going to end. Instead, deal with each issue along the way, looking to see how the gospel is instructing you. Unfortunately, we still have a long way to go to appreciate how every single one of our fellow human beings deserves our respect, because each one is a unique work of God's love. So we still have more to go, and so while we are here, let us ask God to help us in every direction to live faithfully according to the gospel.